Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uba, and today we're going to get some insight into admissions at the college level. My guest today is Mary Wagner. She is the Executive Director for the Undergraduate Admissions for University of South Carolina. Welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it.
So usually I start my guests where you went to college. So where'd you go to school?
Well, I actually attended the University of South Carolina, so I had the good fortune of working for my alma mater. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, and I did my undergraduate degree here, and then I went someplace else to go to get my master's, but I came back in 2004 to work on my PhD at the University of South Carolina. So I have 2 degrees from here, and it's great. I love working for the place that got me started in higher ed.
Fantastic. So let's just go back before we get started on the university. In high school, when did you start thinking about going to college? Was it freshman year of high school, senior year? When did it all begin for you? Or was it just, I have to go?
Well, I went to school a lot longer ago before a lot of our current students were born. And I like to joke about, I actually applied to college before the internet was a thing. And so, a lot of my peers, we talk about how much the college process has changed in the past 30 years. And so it used to be, you might have heard about a couple of your friends who would apply to certain institutions during, you hear stories at the end of your junior year about seniors and where they're going. And then you start in your senior year and you're chatting with friends about where you're going to apply. And you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I'll put that on the list. But now that you're able to research colleges so much more broadly with institutional features, you can go online and there's just a lot more freedom and information about applying to college. I often think about where, would I have ended up at the University of South Carolina had the search process been very, very different. And when I attended the University of South Carolina a long time ago, it was over 85% of the student body was from the state of South Carolina. I knew a lot of people, even though I wasn't, I knew people that I had met through other like statewide events and things like that, and leadership activities or working at summer camp and things like that. And then I'd come to the University of South Carolina and I was surprised by how many people I had actually met before. It was because we were all from South Carolina. But now the institution's changed so much and we have much broader, marketing apparatus, and we have students who research institutions a little bit farther away from home. And we're getting students from all over the country and the world right now. And so our freshman class, for example, will probably be about 55% in-state as opposed to 85% when I was a student here. And overall undergraduate population, we have more than 25,000 students in our undergraduate population, and about 60% of them are from the state of South Carolina. So, it's changed a lot in that you can really find more than one institution in a variety of states, maybe in a part of the country you hadn't considered before, or maybe someplace that you like visiting a lot, but don't really have as much of an opportunity to go there, but maybe college could be that opportunity. Great financial aid opportunities exist. A lot of other colleges and schools are better about communicating that en masse, either online or through digital means. And so it's really opened up the way people apply for college. So I might have started really looking seriously in my senior year, but we find that more often than not, students are looking much earlier than that. Oftentimes, by the end of one's junior year, they're really solidifying their choice set. And we're seeing more students who are sophomores and freshmen that are starting to come to our campus and ask for information and wanting to be on a tour because they really are kind of looking at the whole college search process in a much more holistic way.
Yeah. Now, how about the comparison when you went to school there to now? What were your experiences when you were at school compared to what they are today at the university?
Well, I think, just having access to more information makes you aware of a lot of features that exist at different institutions. And then there's lots of information available online, sites where people can compare institutions side by side. And then you have like almost kind of like an Amazon-ish kind of experience with people rating different schools. And, I would take a lot of that with a grain of salt because, sometimes you just get, really overzealous people who really, really want you to know their opinion. But I think if you are able to connect with institutions and say, I'd like to talk to a current student about, what that's like. Can I talk to some, admissions people will always tell you what they want you to hear, but current students will really tell you what you want to know. And I can tell you that when I'm speaking to colleagues or speaking to friends who have their kids who are going through the process and they may be University of South Carolina graduates, they overwhelmingly say, wow, the school has changed so much. And I don't think that that's unique to the University of South Carolina. I think it's part of a larger national movement towards people who are being much more, I don't want to say, I hate to use the word consumer, but students have specific expectations about what they want their academic environment to be like. That ranges from methods of instruction, classroom environment, residence halls, student activities, ways to get involved, an expectation to do study abroad, undergraduate research, internships. All of these things are kind of the new normal. And I think a long time ago when, my school was a lot smaller 30 years ago when I went to school here, and it was just a state institution. And you just didn't really think about doing a lot of those things now, whereas I think they're more of an expectation. And so institutions have had to really rise to the challenge to provide those kinds of opportunities. And I think a lot of schools are really doing that very well because, again, students are aware of those things. They have access to more resource, more networks to communicate that information to their peers and get ideas from other people who've been successful doing it. So I think that's really kind of how college has changed in general, and even here at the University of South Carolina.
So now, how does one graduate from University of South Carolina to becoming the executive director there as for undergraduate admissions?
Well, I don't think I walked out of here thinking that this is what I wanted to do, but I can tell you that I had an amazing experience as an undergraduate. I chose USC because it was an in-state institution and cost was important to me. And I know that a lot of students will choose an in-state institution, whether it's public because it's subsidized by your state, or maybe you're able to reduce some of your costs by, not having to commute as far, not having to get in, drive a long way, pay for gas or fly to location. And so that's one way to control costs. But, I looked for a school that had a lot of majors, a lot of different majors. I wasn't very sure about what I wanted to do. So that kind of dictated what I wanted. I changed my major 3 times at the university because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. But I did graduate within 4 years on time. And I had an amazing, very involved student life experience. And I think that for people who do go on to work in higher education, a lot of times, so my master's is in student personnel, college student personnel, which is kind of like, learning how to be a professional in the non-academic, more student affairs side of things. And then my PhD is in higher ed administration. And so much of that is informed by the quality of experience I had as an undergraduate here. And I really know that, yes, students go to school to get a degree. You want to get a good job. Parents want to get the students off the family payroll. You want to be able to make sure that you're employable, but you're going to spend most of your time outside the classroom. And I really feel like the work that a lot of our professionals outside the academic realm to really shape and inform the student experience outside the classroom really is important for students to feel like they belong, feel like they're in a friendly place, feel like they have groups of people that they can align with, that they can clubs to join, and ways to make lifelong friends that really dictate whether or not they're happy with their educational experience. And I do believe that students can find that in a lot of different kinds of colleges, but I think it's one of those things where if students are being really honest with themselves, okay, can I get the degree that I want? Can I get the major that I want? Am I going to have a good shot at getting into graduate school or professional school? Can I afford it? Can I get in? All those things, once you clear that hurdle, then students can really spend a lot of time thinking about what's it going to be like to be a student there? What's my peer group going to be like? Who am I going to hang out with in between classes? And what that, that is so important. And so that's how I ended up becoming a director of admission, because I realized that being in a position to explain that, those kinds of things to students is really transformational. And I don't think a lot of families spend a lot of time beyond just getting in and worrying about, what number somebody is on US News and World Report, kind of driving that decision a lot. It's who you choose to spend your time with that oftentimes is it's more than the icing on the cake. It is a lot of the cake. And it's a super important part of students finding a place where they can be happy and thrive in the long run.
So now, was that your first job out of school? Was with the university?
I worked, I took a year off and I traveled working for a women's organization, and I was able to visit 30 different college campuses in 9 months. And it's kind of interesting. It was probably one of the best foundations I ever had for working in college admissions because I lived and worked on a different college campus for 30 weeks.
Wow.
And so every week I was in a different environment in a different area of the country, and it really gives you a good sense of how environment, location, student composition, culture, campus culture really influences how people experience their educational environment. And it really laid a foundation for me to go to graduate school. So then went grad school for student personnel out of state. And my first admissions job was actually working at a private women's college in Georgia. And so I did that. And then I moved on to a regional comprehensive public institution that has a military emphasis. So that was another option that I did. And then I married somebody who was in the military. We moved to another state. I worked at a private evangelical college. So I've worked at all different types of institutions, and then came back to my alma mater when I started working on my PhD in 2004. So kind of a lot of different types of experiences. And I didn't intend, to be the director of admissions at the University of South Carolina, but it's been a wonderful environment for me to really grow and learn as a professional. And I love doing it for my alma mater.
So now, just for a sense for the students and the parents that are watching, what does the executive director for undergraduate admissions do?
So it's a little bit different every single day. Sometimes there are events where we're interacting with students on a regular basis when they're coming to campus for events and tours. Another day might be very focused on operational things where we're talking about configuring an application and what that's going to look like for the next year and how we're planning on reviewing files based on our experience from the previous year. Another day may be very focused on marketing development, communication plans. You might be looking at print materials and thinking about, what's the key message point? What are the key message points that you want your prospective students to hear about you? So that might be another day. One might be very focused on, let's talk about scholarships and how we're going to distribute aid across the applicant pool in order to entice the best students to select the University of South Carolina and also make it affordable and a good value for as many students as possible. And so those are a lot of the things that I do on a daily basis. There's a little bit something new every single day. My favorite part though is talking people into coming to the University of South Carolina, really having some face-to-face with students and families. And so if this was a regular year, if we weren't in the middle of the pandemic, the month of April would be filled with many prospective student events on campus in large numbers, with groups of people who've been admitted, meeting each other, possibly linking up, finding their roommates or people that they want to join clubs with, and meeting professors. And it's just so much fun to kind of feed off of that excitement and energy and watch a high school student really get excited about the next step in their personal journey and their professional trajectory. So that's my favorite part of what we do, but there's a lot of administrivia along the way too, but it's really all about, bringing in the class and getting to know people and having that contact.
So now, as a prospective student, and they want to come to University of South Carolina, what are the aspects of getting in? How do they get in? What kind of grades do they need? What kind of extracurricular activities do they need?
Mm-hmm.
Do they need any of that?
Yeah, so we are a competitive admission institution. And I think one thing that's important for families to consider when they're looking at public institutions in particular, like ours, we probably have some sort of an expectation to serve citizens of our respective states first and foremost. And so one thing I like to make sure out-of-state students know about is, we're a South Carolina public institution. We're going to prioritize South Carolinians in our process. And we're also a small state. So we don't have that many kids living in the state of South Carolina relative to the other 49 states in the United States. There's more people living in the other 49 states that live in South Carolina. And so that means, if our application volume grows, it more often than not grows with out-of-state students, which means it's going to be more competitive for admission for out-of-state students. And so we give priority to in-state students, and then we try to fill in on our class goal. and shape our class with, specific, types of students and majors and backgrounds and things like that, with our out-of-state population. And so this year, 72% of the students who applied for admission to the fall 2021 class were not even from the state of South Carolina.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people, especially South Carolinians, they kind of consider the University of South Carolina as kind of like this de facto kind of like, well, it's my state flagship. Of course it's there for me. But I often like to remind them that we're a destination of choice for students from all over the country and the world. We had 43 different states represented in our freshman class this past fall, and that was during the pandemic fall. We've had some years where we've gotten close to 47, 48. Of the 50 states represented, we're still working real hard on Idaho. So if you have any Idaho viewers out there, we'd love to get them here. We don't always get Idaho, but we have someone from Hawaii, which means you have to find that person and meet them and figure out how to get them to take you home for spring break. So, but at any rate, getting in means better grades on the whole. This year, our freshman class that's been admitted for fall 2021, they presented a weighted core average of around a 4.2 in the admitted class. And we're test optional this year for fall 2021. And so it's still on, we haven't made a decision about 2022 or 23 yet, but we're in active discussions about that. We'll put information on our website, but students who have very strong grades and take a rigorous course curriculum, trying to take the most rigorous things that they can get their hands on while they're in school and doing well at that is really the best defense, I guess, as far as, being able to make your case for being admitted to the university as a non-resident, because we just have so many more out-of-state students applying than we have in-state.
Now, do you get students internationally as well? And how about if the student plays a sport or an extracurricular activity like band or something like that?
I'll talk about international students first. It's been a challenging year, as you know, for higher ed for international students, and I think that the changeover in the presidential administration will probably do something to encourage a lot more students internationally to consider returning to the United States for higher education. We're starting to see a little bit of it come back this year. It's going to be challenging to kind of get beyond a lot of these pandemic limitations and all that may influence students' ability to travel. But this year we did see an uptick in international students applying to the institution, which is great. We allow students to, demonstrate English proficiency through a variety of different methods. It could be the TOEFL or the SAT if they have access to it. That's been a little bit harder to do this year, but students can also participate in Duolingo, which is another testing option that students can use to demonstrate English proficiency. That's new this year that we're allowing students to do that. So that kind of helps open the door for qualified students from outside the country. For athletes, the process is very different. And I think a lot of people are kind of surprised that admissions, we don't do athletic recruitment. So that's managed by our athletic compliance office. And so they will often communicate with us about people that they are actively recruiting, check with us, is this person admissible? Or is this somebody that we might have to make a special case for in order to make an exception? And so they communicate those priorities to us throughout the year as they're building their class of new athletes for the respective sports. So that's kind of how that works. But we really only focus on academic admission in our office. And there was one other that you had asked about.
Yeah, I said extracurricular activities like band or things like that.
Yeah, so you don't have to be a music major to be in the band at the University of South Carolina, and we have a lot of different types of performance ensembles. What's kind of cool about that is we've never admitted anybody because they play an instrument in the band, or we haven't ever had to manage it at that level, but we do actively recruit students to participate in the band, and they can get some merit scholarships for participating in the band, even if they're not a music major. And so that's a very attractive option that really brings students in. And, it's really, this probably won't be a surprise to you, but I think people are often, they're like, what do you mean you have a lot of STEM majors that want to participate in band? And I find that, music and an affinity for STEM, that intuitive nature, there's just it uses the same parts of your brain that tends to attract students. And we find that a lot of students who, they might be engineers, but they're also participating in some sort of performance ensemble because they really, really enjoy it. and they have a knack for it, and they just, they don't want to major in music, they want to be in engineering. So that's, it's always wonderful to see that as well. That flexibility is nice.
So you talked about financial aid type of benefits that the school has and scholarships and things of that sort. That's a big thing for parents and students to look at colleges. Could you give a sense of what the ranges are in state, out of state, what type of scholarships there are, if there's any other merit monies or different things that they can apply for?
Well, so for students coming in as freshmen in our class, everybody who applies by our priority application deadline, which is December 1 for the following fall, will automatically be considered for any kind of merit-based aid that's offered through the admissions office. So all you got to do is apply on time and complete your file. If you're applying test optional, then we'll ask you to make sure you submit your essays and fill out your application completely, and it's a little room for your resume to report that on there, and you can add that into the application. We'll look at that when we're doing our holistic review. But then we also, we're looking at the rigor of the classes that you've taken. But then students can also qualify for merit aid based on standardized test scores and GPA. So we don't have a grid per se. And I know that a lot of times students are like, well, what's the minimum I need to get a scholarship? Or, we don't work that way at South Carolina. I know some schools will post that online, but we have a finite pool of merit aid that we can distribute each year. And so depending on how good the applicant pool and how big it is, can really dictate what those various thresholds are. And so our objective is to award aid to as many qualified students as possible as an inducement for them to enroll at the university. But sometimes those thresholds can vary from year to year. In state, it's a little bit more, we have the same number of applicants almost every single year, so we kind of know what those thresholds are. And all in-state students also tend to qualify for our state lottery scholarships. So we have a lottery-funded merit scholarship program that students who meet a certain number of criteria will qualify for those awards, and they can add those to any other awards that we may offer from the admissions office. Out of state, the awards can run anywhere from $6,000 a year to close to over $100,000 a year, depending on how much aid you qualify for, how competitive you are. But all of our out-of-state scholarships will come with some form of a reduction in the out-of-state tuition rate. Some of them have a partial reduction. Some might do a little bit more halfway between in and out of state. Some will offer the in-state rate plus a little bit of extra money, and those are very popular as well. But it's usually a combination of grades and really strong test scores and an outstanding application that would qualify you for the most generous awards that are in excess of $100,000 over 4 years.
Wow. Now, do you find, I mean, other than pandemic year, this past year, but do you find a lot of people tend to come and do tours at the school and see what the dorm rooms are like and the facilities and so on?
Yeah, I think schools have been very different depending on what part of the country you're in, have had very different approaches to how they've been doing campus visits this year on account of the pandemic. So we started pretty early with opening up the campus to very small but frequent tours in the fall. So we started in August, and it was lots of little mini tours. We didn't have quite as many people on each tour, which is great for getting, up close and personal attention. It's unfortunately not sustainable for an institution of our size. So we're making it work for this year. We have lots of little teeny tours. We've expanded the size of those groups a little bit in the spring as COVID has gotten under control, and we know more about how to mitigate it, social distance and things like that. And so we're doing lots of what we call mini admitted student days on Mondays and Fridays and a few Saturdays throughout this month, where people can at least get in front of somebody from their department, get on a tour. We haven't been able to let people into academic buildings because of our current protocols on campus. And we haven't been able to let people get into residence halls. So those are two things that we know students really, really want to see, but just given our current, guidelines, we've been a little bit reluctant to do that. We've been asking for, a little bit more latitude on all those kinds of things, but it's been it's been hard, but I would say on the whole, people are still coming to visit. And if we weren't letting people sign up to visit, they probably would come anyways. I mean, we are hearing stories. I hear them from my peers at other institutions. They're like, how are you guys handling these people when you try to run a tour, people like jumping out of the bushes and trying to jump on your campus tour after you've told them that they can't be on your tour because you've hit capacity. And I'm like, okay, A, that's weird. B, you got to tell them no. And so, we spend a lot of time kind of reinforcing with our visitors, like, we know you have lots of people who want to do this, but we've got to follow our own policies and make sure we're keeping the visit experience safe for all who are here. When you jump on a tour after you've been told no, that expands the capacity and may make other people feel uncomfortable. So it's hard to enforce those things, but we're trying to be very proactive about that. But we're pleased with what we've been able to do. We'd like to be able to do bigger events, and we hope that we're going to be in a position to do that this fall. Have our fingers crossed, but on the whole, it's been pretty good. I mean, people say they really like it, and the feedback that we're getting from our surveys and all has been very positive.
That's great. Well, we're coming to the end of our show, and usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents and the students that want to come to University of South Carolina? What advice do you want to give them?
Well, we have a lot of ways to express interest in the university. I mean, there's the old-fashioned, just getting on the mailing list. I know that a lot of and you can go to our website to do that. But you're probably also, your students are also realizing that a lot of mail seems to just kind of show up in gluts throughout the year. And typically that follows, major statewide testing, whether you're taking the SAT, ACT, PSAT, those kinds of statewide testing mandates that often exist do put your students' names in the pool for potentially getting contacted by other institutions that want to reach out to you. And so if you have the option to say, yes, I'd love to have colleges contact me, that opens the door a little bit for other institutions to find you and reach out to you if you want to hear about what they have to do. That's probably where that mail glut is coming from anytime you answer in the affirmative to those kinds of things. But there are lots of sites online that help you compare colleges where you can put your name in the hat. You can call institutions, especially ours, say, hey, when can I get on a campus tour? You can go to, sc.edu/visit, and you can learn about how to visit the University of South Carolina. We're open for tours over the summer. And if you happen to be coming through the area, as we know a lot of visitors do, South Carolina is a very popular vacation destination. Beautiful beaches, awesome historic spaces, great things to do outside. Come by the University of South Carolina. The interstate runs right through Columbia, so we'd love to have you on campus. But I think that if I could also give advice too, I know that so many institutions are really kind of grappling with this test optional stuff, and so some of the questions and some schools have made decisions about what they're going to do indefinitely, or maybe in the short run, or maybe some schools haven't made an announcement yet. And I think that if you have an opportunity to sit for one of these exams, you absolutely should. You want to have a test score on hand simply so that you can choose to apply to more than one institution that may require scores, right? If it happens to make it in your choice set.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uga. Until next time.